Tonight, the true scope of the tornado damage in America's deep south as new storms roll in. Locating what was lost.
Flower shop, beauty shop, barber, law offices just down the street are all gone.
As much needed federal aid arrived.
I knew that there was going to be help needed. I just decided to volunteer my work.
Accessibility issues on Air Canada.
They actually said that none of us were welcome on the flight anymore. It was incredible retaliation.
A teen almost thrown off a plane because of his wheelchair. Plus walking where kings are crowned.
Nobody apart from the clergy go up to this space. It's going to be just a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Experiencing the monarchy's marvelous mosaic.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo. Reporting tonight, John Venevali Rao.
Good evening. More severe weather has hammered parts of the American deep south tonight, a region still trying to recover from a deadly outbreak of tornadoes. Those storms have killed at least 26 people, battering some of the poorest regions in the U.S. In Rolling Fork, Mississippi, which was one of the hardest hit areas, you can see what it looked like there before a powerful twister ripped through town and the devastating aftermath, just about everything blown away. There were damaging tornadoes in Georgia today, and with the latest, here's CTV's Richard Madden.
An urgent search and recovery mission is now underway across a huge swath of the Deep South after violent storms left behind trails of destruction, heartbreak, and loss.
And I was told that they passed away in each other's arms.
Rolling Fork, Mississippi nearly flattened after a massive tornado whipped through late Friday night. Homes ripped off foundations, buildings unrecognizable. More than 24 were killed. Several others remain unaccounted for. Search teams are now looking for people trapped under piles of rubble as survivors describe their race to safety.
It sounds just like a train. We all went to the bathroom, got down on the floor in the bathroom. All I could do was just pray. We all hugged each other.
We are in the tornado right now.
U.S. officials say the tornado packed wind speeds of at least 200 kilometers per hour. The sheer power captured on this school surveillance video. It's all part of a massive storm system with at least 20 reported tornadoes in an outbreak stretching from Texas through to Georgia. No deaths reported there, but damage was extensive and at least 3 were injured in disasters that are becoming more frequent.
I know it's a very frustrating time for the people of West Point. This is the third tornado we've had in a 2-month span, as well as some straight line wind damage.
But Mississippi appears to be the hardest hit and now begins the monumental task to rebuild.
What we've seen over the last 36 hours in Mississippi, on the one hand, has been heartbreaking to see the loss and devastation of these communities, but on the other hand, has been inspiring and gives me great reason for optimism.
And President Joe Biden has declared Mississippi a disaster area, bringing federal aid and resources. But as that help rolls in, so are other storms in that same region with more tornado warnings. John.
Okay, Richard, we'll be keeping an eye on that. Thank you. More bodies have been pulled from the rubble in Pennsylvania after that massive explosion at a chocolate factory. The remains of 2 more people were located late tonight, raising the death toll to 7. The victims are believed to be the ones previously unaccounted for. The stunning blast on Friday was captured on camera. The cause of it is still under investigation. Ukraine is calling for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council after Russia's president this weekend announced Moscow would deploy tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. NATO has also condemned Vladimir Putin for what it's calling dangerous and irresponsible rhetoric. Belarus borders Ukraine, though the U.S. says it's not seen any indication yet that Putin has moved in tactical nukes. Meanwhile, an explosion deep inside Russia has wounded 3 people and damaged some apartment buildings. Russian authorities have blamed a Ukrainian drone, though Kyiv has not commented on the blast. Over the past year, the number of air passenger complaints to Canada's transport watchdog has more than tripled, climbing past 42,000 as of this month. Some of those complaints are from people with disabilities frustrated with how airlines handle their mobility devices, including wheelchairs. And tonight, CTV's Heather Butts has the story of a family caught up in the latest distressing dispute.
Flying over the Grand Canyon was a highlight during the Gillison family trip to Phoenix, Arizona. Their flight home to Toronto, a much different experience.
And one of the flight attendants said that she would not make the closet available for Emery's wheelchair. And I asked her why not, and she said because she had stuff in it.
Emery turns 16 tomorrow. He has Duchenne muscular dystrophy and can only walk short distances.
I need to save the muscles for more important things, you know, like making the heart beat and stuff.
Considered an extension of his body, his mother spent hours arranging for the wheelchair to be stowed in cabin, even getting an email stating the U.S. regulations and measurement requirements which his chair met. But after confusion over those dimensions, the family was told to deal with airport staff. Katie Schultz says crews on the plane were unaccommodating, refusing to see documents.
They had no training. The flight attendant, who was so difficult and retaliatory with me, she actually said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of this before, which is why I offered her the email.
Schultz was then told she could not board the flight and says when her daughter asked for the attendant's last name, she was kicked off the plane.
The energy disruption, the fear that we experienced dealing with Air Canada.
Emery was able to remain on that flight home with his dad, his chair stored in cargo, but only after his mother pleaded for medical reasons.
I'm usually the person at the airport that's cool, like a cucumber, but like, it's kind of hard to be cool when like a frustrating thing like that happens.
Air Canada says it will be following up with the customer directly and that generally we fully appreciate the importance of mobility devices and make every effort to transport these devices safely in a manner convenient for customers.
Other people use chairs too, and some of them don't have moms like mine that can like stand up for them and like fight for them and stuff.
His mother is an award-winning litigation lawyer and disability advocate. She is acting as counsel for Mayanne Ziv, a Toronto woman whose chair was damaged in September by Air Canada.
I have to question whether Air Canada has a cultural problem. Is it coming from the top, or is it a lack of training and a lack of commitment to that training? I don't know, but it's rampant and it needs to stop.
The Transport Minister has said major changes are coming this spring to strengthen and clarify the rules for passenger protection, something this family says is long overdue. John.
Okay, Heather, thanks very much. The International Airport in St. John's, Newfoundland reopened tonight after being shut down for nearly 48 hours because of a fire. Commercial flights have resumed after dozens of flights were canceled this weekend. Investigators are still trying to figure out what caused the fire, which broke out in the ceiling of the departures lounge. Canadian military personnel are on their way tonight to a global political hotspot after a Navy frigate set sail for the Indo-Pacific. This morning, the HMCS Montreal left Halifax, the first of 3 Canadian ships bound for the region this year. Part of Operation Projection, the Montreal will assist international efforts to monitor UN sanctions imposed on North Korea.
For the United Nations Security Council resolutions about proliferation of weapons into North Korea in order to stop that.
The crew will spend 6 months at sea and return to Halifax in October. In Toronto, police are investigating what appears to be another random attack on the transit system, with the victim this time a teenage boy. He was sitting on a bench at a subway station when police say he was stabbed.
It's a 16-year-old boy just sitting at the subway station, minding his own business. And again, we've mentioned that it is an unprovoked attack, which does make it even more concerning for us.
A 22-year-old man was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. This is the 3rd violent attack on Toronto's transit system in the last 9 months. More police officers began patrolling the subway in January, but the extra patrols ended earlier this month. The Liberal government is set to table its federal budget on Tuesday, one the finance minister has promised will include targeted support to combat inflation, along with investments in green infrastructure. But if CTV's Kevin Gallagher reports, turbulent economic forecasts are presenting a real challenge.
Though prices on fuel and food remain high, inflation has started to cool, in part due to interest rate hikes. But a former central banker warns economic growth is likely to slow too.
Yes, the risk of a hard landing has definitely gone up, given that so much has already happened, and we're still waiting for the rest of the effects of interest rate rises to work their way through.
With recession risks rising, the federal government is preparing to present its budget on Tuesday, though some economists point to unemployment rates hovering near record lows.
I think the issue is it going to be a bad recession or is it going to be a mild one? I'm going to be one of the few economists that's optimistic here and say that if we do have a recession, it's going to be mild.
The Liberals are left with a delicate balancing act: provide targeted financial supports for low-income people without making inflation worse.
We believe that it is important to be compassionate and to be fiscally responsible at the same time.
Despite promising to rein in spending, the government has already hinted at major investments for green energy infrastructure and increased healthcare transfers. The NDP is expecting an expansion of dental care too as part of its deal to prop up the government. Jagmeet Singh warned the Liberals not to take it for granted.
I'm not satisfied because I don't want to just push government. I want to be the one making the decisions.
And there will be difficult budget decisions as well, including on whether to increase taxes, John. A tough sell if the economy takes a turn.
All right, thanks, Kevin. And of course, CTV News will bring you full budget coverage on Tuesday. The 1-hour special with chief news anchor and senior editor Omar Sachedina begins at 4 p.m. Eastern on CTV, CTV News Channel, and ctvnews.ca. Well, we've all heard about the struggle to find affordable housing. It turns out the shortage of real estate is also a problem after death. In BC, cemeteries are running out of land, driving up the costs of burial plots. Here's CTV's Sinjin Alexander on the pressures of a growing demand and shrinking supply.
Just like Metro Vancouver's real estate market, those who missed out and didn't buy a plot early may have to pay dearly. Demand for spots in cemeteries is still climbing, but the supply in an area crunched up against the sea and mountains is running out.
Really, it's kind of the Wild West out there.
Cemetery designer Bill Peckett says burial plots face the same market pressures as houses and condos. Sites once bought for hundreds of dollars are now selling online for up to $54,000.
I do not begrudge people for wanting to sell their grave sites because everybody's cost of living is going up, and so why wouldn't people try and get as much as they could?
And just like condominiums, they're being flipped for a profit. And just like real estate, it's all about location. The closer to town, the better the view, the more a plot will fetch.
Now, most people are cremated these days, and sometimes that is choice, but more often there is no other option. Traditional burials have just become too expensive.
That's partly a result of the cost of, let us call it, dying.
Many Canadian cities were designed when people believed there was an endless supply of land, and burial grounds weren't always a priority. In Europe, they've begun recycling by respectfully removing remains with the family's consent and placing them in vaults or charnel houses. Japan is building burial high-rises.
This is relatively new to us, and we're finally reaching that point where we have to start to be more inventive and dig a little deeper, pardon the pun.
Often it's people who have lost a loved one who are searching for a plot. They're often vulnerable and most susceptible to paying these high prices. Sinjin Alexander, CTV News, Vancouver.
Well, coming up, the royal hidden gem hiding underfoot. The medieval masterpiece making its modern coronation debut. Plus more massive protests in Israel. In Israel, more protesters poured onto the streets today after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu abruptly fired his defense minister for challenging a plan to overhaul the judicial system. Thousands of protesters in Tel Aviv blocked a major highway and set fires. Controversial new legislation would give Parliament the power to overturn Supreme Court decisions and has fueled months of demonstrations fiercely dividing the country. American Vice President Kamala Harris arrived in Africa today for the start of an historic trip. She touched down in Ghana, the first stop on a three-nation tour, with her visit closely watched in Africa, being the first black woman U.S. Vice President ever to set foot on the continent. Harris will also visit Tanzania and Zambia on a diplomatic mission to deepen America's ties with Africa and counter the influence of China and Russia. Visitors to London's Westminster Abbey will get a unique chance this summer to do something that hasn't happened in living memory: with guests being permitted to stand on the exact spot where King Charles will be crowned. But there is a condition attached. CTV's Paul Workman explains.
1,000 years of British monarchy have been crowned in the grandeur of Westminster Abbey. The last, of course, was Queen Elizabeth II. And if you look closely at the floor under the throne, that's right, wall-to-wall carpet. For her son's coronation, the first in 7 decades, there will be no carpet. Only the exquisite 13th century mosaic known as the Cosmati pavement, a marvel of geometric patterns in stone, glass, and metal, unique to the UK and just about everywhere else.
For the first time in kind of known history, this pavement will be on view and used for a coronation. So we get to see all the beautiful designs, all the colourful stones that make up this amazing work of art.
The ancient mosaic was restored in 2010, but always kept out of bounds. In the very center, on a circle of polished alabaster, will sit the coronation throne. And this summer, a rare opportunity will follow. A small number of visitors will be able to walk across it in shoeless splendor. One group of 10 a day, that's all, on a socks-only guided tour of the famous Cosmati mosaic.
It's such a rare opportunity. Nobody, apart from the clergy, go up to this space. So for visitors to come here and be able to walk on the pavement and get up close and look at the designs, it's going to be just a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
The pavement was finished in 1268, named after the Italian family that designed it, and soon to be a shoes-off chance to follow in the footsteps of a new British king. Paul Workman, CTV News, London.
Well, still ahead, breaking down barriers.
My goodness, wouldn't it just open up another level of education for all Canadians?
A stunning tribute for heroic Indigenous women through a historic currency campaign. A new campaign is challenging the Bank of Canada to make an historic change. The Native Women's Association of Canada is on a mission to put the face of an Indigenous woman on the $20 bill. In tonight's Indigenous Circle, CTV's Donna Sound looks at the effort to change the currency, honoring women they think deserve to be remembered and recognized.
Reconciliation comes in all forms. So does healing. The Change the Bill campaign would help do both through art. The goal is to have an extraordinary Indigenous woman featured on a $20 bill.
One of them being Margaret Pictou, who was part of the Canadian Navy. She was an aerial photographer who had to take photographs by hanging upside down from the planes.
12 women have been named and 1 hoped to be chosen. Cindy Blackstock is a Gitxsan children's advocate who has devoted her life's work to improving the well-being of Indigenous children. Josephine Mandeman is an Anishinaabe water protector. She walked around the Great Lakes to bring awareness to water pollution and traveled over 40,000 kilometers. In Canada's history of printing money, there has never been an Indigenous woman on its currency. Emma Toth is a collaborator on this project.
For myself, even when seeing the artwork that came in from the women, learned a lot about the Indigenous female leaders who really shaped a lot of our country.
It would also shift a negative narrative of Indigenous people in Canada by showcasing their outstanding achievements.
My goodness, wouldn't it just open up another level of education for all Canadians?
The petition is 28,000 signatures strong. Lynn Guru, CEO of the Native Women's Association of Canada, is getting the package ready to present it to the Governor of the Bank of Canada.
I think that we have a pretty convincing argument and a really good chance to make this happen.
The prints are also being sold, with proceeds going to the artists. Donna Sound, CTV News, Toronto.
And time is ticking down if you want to take a shot at naming some adorable new members of the Greater Vancouver Zoo. The red panda cubs are the first ever to be born on the West Coast and arrived last June as part of the zoo's conservation breeding program. Red pandas are endangered and are native to parts of Asia. A naming contest that launched last month ends tonight with the winners getting an exclusive meet and greet with the entire red panda family. After the break, a shining example of ingenuity.
We really want to show people how powerful clean energy and clean transportation can be.
Meet the team of students who went the extra mile. Finally for us, the engineering students from the Maritimes who you could say are on a roll, passionate about finding climate solutions and hoping to make their mark at a major solar car competition. With more, here's CTV's Creason Adjkate.
Being built by a team of young students and dreamers at Dalhousie University, the solar-powered vehicle is the first of its kind for Atlantic Canada.
We really want to show people how powerful clean energy and clean transportation can be and kind of inspire industries.
A group determined to make a difference designing this prototype, which runs exclusively on sunshine. The team started with just 5 members back in 2021 and have now grown to more than 80, with diverse backgrounds in engineering and computer science.
We gutted the entire insides of it and are redoing everything that basically makes the car run.
The basic operation of the car is we have the solar array over here, and that takes the energy from the sun and converts it into electricity. So from there it flows into this high voltage box.
They want to race their car at an annual track competition for college and university students from around North America. That this year will take place in Kansas, though they're still trying to raise the $20,000 they need to send a crew. The competition is not about speed, but rather endurance.
For our race, the goal is to get the car there, and we do as many laps as possible each day of the race.
When it comes to mass-produced electric vehicles, the use of solar panels is still somewhat rare. Sometimes they're used to power smaller devices, but generally they still don't create enough juice to fully power the motors.
They'll be facing that way.
But that isn't stopping these students in searching for climate solutions.
Just trying to make the world better and last longer, I guess.
What you'd call a bright idea indeed. Creason Adjkate, CTV News, Halifax.
Well, that's it for us tonight. I'm John Venavalley-Rao. For Sandy and the rest of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Omar will be here tomorrow. Have a good night and a great week.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.